So I'm going to give a quick introduction to the NMRbox project and to the platform. And I'll be kind of disconnecting from my talk every once in a while and actually going and using NMRbox and using a website to show you some various things. And along the talk, over the last several years, we've received a lot of support tickets. And often the support tickets come in certain areas. People end up having the same problem. So some of those problems that have occurred over the years that are kind of a lot of people have, I'll sort of spend a little bit of time to address those issues and show people how to get through them. So the NMRbox is a P41 National Center for Biomolecular NMR Data Processing and Analysis. It's a collaboration between the University of Connecticut, UConn Health, University of Wisconsin, and the BMRB. And the NMRbox team is actually quite large. Here is a list of some of the, I think I've got most of the NMRbox team here. A few names to really highlight is Jeff Hoke, obviously, is the PI. Adam Schuyler, who basically does all of our workshop coordination, in addition to helping generate the NMRbox platform. Gerard Weatherby, who basically handles almost all the technical aspects on the back end of building and maintaining NMRbox. John Waddell is an amazing programmer. Yeah, that keeps a lot of the nice new features, especially on the website that you're going to see shortly. And many others, obviously, as well. But I just wanted to point out a few people there. So about probably 7-8 years ago, when we came up with the idea of building NMRbox, we knew there were various challenges to computational platform for doing NMR. One of those challenges is the discovery of software. There are so many different software packages, and how does one go about and discover all of those packages? And there's probably not hundreds, there's probably thousands of different software packages. And new packages are being released all the time. And then hybrid methods are becoming more popular. So the number of software packages is even greater because you have to include these other methods like cryo-EM and SACS and whatnot. There's also a fragmentation of platform. So lots of people use Apple laptops and desktops, and a lot of programs will run on that platform, but not all programs. Windows, very few programs in the NMR world work on Windows. Various Linux distributions, programming languages, various libraries. So all these things make it very difficult to install and maintain software, a wide variety of software that are needed to do NMR. You know, a good example of this too is recently Apple has dropped support for 32-bit applications. So everybody's favorite processing program, NMR Pipe with NMR Draw. So NMR Draw doesn't work anymore on Apple computers. And it looks like Apple is about to announce that they're going to be dropping Intel x86 architecture soon. So it may be lots of NMR software will no longer work in the coming years on an Apple. Library conflicts, difficulty in compiling, whatnot. So another challenge is the persistency of software. So a lot of times software is developed by a graduate student. That graduate student graduates and moves on. There might be grant funding for software development that ends. Software just might stop working. If platforms evolve, the software may no longer be able to be installed on old platforms. But there's lots of very important software that it may be 15, 20 years old. It's still important to try to keep running in the community. And it's very difficult for each individual lab to try to maintain all of that software with backwards compatibility. Another challenge is the complexity of installation. We're working on a program now called King, which is an older program. It's actually running on one computer now. I think this program is relegated to running on one computer in the world at this point, but it's a very useful program that many users want to have access to. And you see King relies on CCP NMR analysis, MOMO, WADOS, WHATIF, POVRE, HACWA, ProCheck, and Explore NIH. And all those listed in red are sort of older programs that may not be very easy to install and keep running at this point. So the challenge, if you want to install King, is much larger than just installing King. It's installing, like 7, 8, 9 other packages that support that King relies upon. And another big challenge is becoming more and more. It's a problem more and more people are thinking about, is the reproducibility of computational studies. There's a great quote by David Donahoe that says a computational study is reproducible only when it provides the complete software environment needed to reproduce the figures. And there's lots of obstacles to reproducibility. There might be missing primary or empirical data. The software, the scripts, the programs might be missing, annotations. And NMRbox cannot solve all of these types of reproducibility obstacles, but we can at least address the software reproducibility and the persistency of the software itself. So at least the software that was used in studies that are being published now will be able to be executed again in the future. So NMRbox tries to provide a solution to these challenges because, in discovery, all the software is in one location, and we have tools for finding and discovering the software. It's a single platform, so we don't have a fragmentation problem. Because we're using virtual machines, the software is persistent over time. We're handling the installation, so the complexity to the user doesn't exist, and then the reproducibility or the persistency of the software is obviously handled as well. Just a quick background. This is a little bit of an older figure here, but the numbers on the bottom are correct. So currently we have over 2,000 registered users from 49 different countries. Our biggest user base is the US with nearly 1,400 users. So NMRbox is used fairly extensively across the globe, which is actually very exciting for us. And the NMRbox project itself has what I'm breaking down to 4 main deliverables. One of them is the platform, which is the virtual machine that has all the NMR software related and all the back-end infrastructure needed to make that happen. There is another component to NMRbox that I'm listing as data, which is the idea here is to do better metadata management and workflow annotation, better integration with the BMRB for richer depositions. Then we have another aspect of the NMRbox project I call analytics, which are to develop Bayesian tools to enhance data analysis and interpretation, and to generate APIs so additional software packages could utilize these advanced analytics tools. And then lastly, why we're all here today is training. We run a very large number of workshops and tutorials. Maybe in the coming year, most of them are going to be in this format instead of us traveling about. But we're going to continue to do training and to support our user base. But today this talk is primarily going to focus on the platform. So just a little bit about NMRbox when it comes to software. We are agnostic in our software acquisitions. If we'll install all software that people request. At this point, most of our software are being installed by user requests. So if NMRbox does not have software packages you'd like to see, you can send us a support email, and we will attempt to include it in the next release. We have over 200 different software packages covering NMR, all flavors of NMR, from data processing, relaxation analysis. We have software packages for SACS, cryo-EM, molecular dynamics, molecular visualization, and just whatever other scientific applications that are needed or are in conjunction with the various other software packages we have installed. We also have a lot of utility packages that are included, a variety of editors. So hopefully everybody's favorite text editor is in there, drawing tools, programming languages across the board. Excuse me, does somebody have a question? Okay. And we also have our Octave, and very recently, we have finally been able to utilize the University of Connecticut's MATLAB license, and we are now, MATLAB is now included for all users inside NMRbox. So all users have access to MATLAB. That was a very recent, that's very recent, that's come about in the last few weeks. So one of the big questions we've had over the years is we have this platform, we have all these software packages, and a lot of users ask, well, where can I see what's installed? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go over to, going to share my web browser. And if you go to the NMRbox website, you can hit software, and we have a listing of all the software packages that are installed inside NMRbox. And then if you click on any of those packages, you should be able to pull up the title, a synopsis, a description, URL, which version is installed. If there's a citation, it will show you what the citation is. There's also some search criteria up here, so you can do molecular modeling, and we can see all the packages in that category. So that's one place where users can go to find software. I'm going to share my NMRbox. So I've logged into NMRbox at this point. And once you're logged into NMRbox, we have a new tool in our latest release of NMRbox, which is called the Software Explorer. And if you go, my menu might look a little bit different than yours, but no matter how it looks, you're going to see an NMRbox window, an NMRbox menu, and then inside there's a few icons. One of them is the NMRbox Software Explorer. In the past, we've had a variety of software packages that mostly GUI-based applications that were in this menu bar. And NMRbox has over 200 packages with, I think, over 10,000 different binaries that can be executed. So trying to generate a typical launcher menu that you would see in Windows or an Apple computer that users are normally accustomed to becomes a daunting challenge. So what we've done instead is we've come to this NMR Software Explorer. So we took away the small number of programs that used to be there, because what we were finding is users thought that the only thing installed in NMRbox were those small number of programs that they can see there. And instead we replaced it with the Software Explorer. So this is not a launcher in the typical sense, but what it is it's a discovery tool. So when it launches, you can do a search criteria, or you can just scroll through and find various programs. So let's say you were looking for Kara, so you find Kara, you highlight it. It shows the same information here that you would get as if you went through our website. And it also shows you the binaries, or which programs could be executed to run the program. So if I wanted to run Kara, I can just copy this, or I can just open up a terminal and I can type the command. So this is just a great way for finding the various programs, what's installed, some information about it. And not only that, but it'll actually tell you what the commands are that you're going to use to launch it. But in the end, it's not a software launcher itself. So if you were saying you were looking at, say, NMR pipe, and you scroll through, there's lots of binaries in NMR pipe, but one of them is NMR draw. You're still going to have to come over here and type NMR draw to actually execute the command. So the programs that are going to be executed in NMRbox are almost always going to be executed from a terminal window. But this Software Explorer can help find the various software applications. Another place is we install almost all our software in the directory user software. So if you go to the user software directory and do a directory listing, you can actually see a lot of programs. That's another way that a user can discover what's inside NMRbox. So I've already showed this, so I'm going to skip this. And skip this. Oh, one last place, I won't go there now, but if you go to the NMRbox website, there is a release notes page, and you can see the release notes for all of the versions of NMRbox. We'll tell you the software packages that are installed, which version, and what the status is, whether it's a new package or whether it's been updated from a previous release of NMRbox. Excuse me. So NMRbox relies on VM technology, virtual machine technology. And the virtual machine, so the NMRbox platform is packaged as the virtual machine, and it can be accessed remotely on our servers, or you can download it and run it locally. And it's free for all academic and nonprofit and government labs. And the downloadable version, you're going to download and you're going to run on your own local hardware, and you're going to need your own hypervisor. So you're going to need VMware Fusion or VMware Workstation or VirtualBox from Oracle. One of those, or there might be others as well, but those are the most popular. And I would recommend for users, if you have access to the VMware products, Workstation or Fusion, a lot of universities will have licenses for their users, for their students. Those do work a little bit more robustly than Oracle's VirtualBox does, but VirtualBox will work if needed. The biggest benefit is you get offline access. So if you work remotely and you don't have internet access a lot, using a cloud-based platform, it isn't going to work very well for you. You also have root permission, so if you need to make lots of modifications to the NMRbox VM, obviously it's your copy, so you could do whatever you need to it. The platform as a service is the majority of NMRbox users access NMRbox as a platform as service, and you can connect using the real VNC viewer, which I'll talk about, or SSH, and I'll talk about that shortly. The nice thing about this is it only takes a couple seconds to connect. You basically, in 5 seconds, one can be connected. It runs anywhere, and it runs just about on any platform now, including tablets and phones if you so desired. The VNC sessions are persistent, so once they're started, they'll continue to run until they're forcefully exited, which is nice. So that means if you have processing jobs running, and you can close the viewer and they'll continue to work. We have full GPU backing for 3D rendering. So if you're using like PyMol when you're drawing surfaces, you can get very high performance drawing, even though it's remote. You have access to high core, high memory VMs. I'll talk about that in a minute. Our GPUs are high-end NVIDIA GPUs that support CUDA processing. So the software that does support CUDA processing will have the ability to utilize it, the GPUs for processing. We have secure storage. We also can offer to spin up VMs on demand. So if somebody needs a custom VM for a workshop, or if a developer is trying to if a developer has some needs, we can help spin up VMs for users. And our model, though, is that we use high core, high memory VMs with multiple NMRbox users attached to those VMs. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. From a hardware point of view, just kind of say we have fairly significant resources on the back end. We have 24 high-end Dell servers, where we have an expansion coming this year that's going to add significantly to our computational resources. We have about 1,000 cores and 6 terabytes of RAM, GPUs. We have an abundance of enterprise class storage, and we have very high network bandwidth. We have a 100 gig network connection to our ISP with failover, and we have a 40 gig redundant network fabric in our data center. So from a network point of view, we are very well equipped. So if you log into NMRbox, you're going to have a home folder, and that home folder is going to be mounted at /home/NMRbox/ whatever your username is. And that's universal. So whichever NMRbox VM you connect to, your home folder is going to be the same. It's a remote file share, and all VMs are going to have access to it. So it does not really matter which VM you connect to, your files are always going to be the same. We also have a shared folder at /public and a tutorial folder at /tutorial. Both of those are also universal. Doesn't matter which NMRbox VM you connect to. Then in each NMRbox VM, there is a scratch disk that can be mounted from /scratch/username, whatever your username is. That is specific to a VM. So if you change VMs, it's gonna, the data would not be the same. The advantage of the scratch disk is it is very fast. So all of these other folders, your home folder is over an NFS share, and there is some latency. It's probably about 10 to 20 millisecond latency. So if you're opening or closing a couple files, 10, 20 milliseconds is nothing. You won't even know it's there. But if you're doing some types of processing where you're reading and writing files very, very quickly, NMRpipe, which we'll be using later today, could be one of those programs where it could be very I/O intensive. You can get very dramatically improved performance if you copy your data to your scratch folder, process the data there, and then move it back to your home folder. And it is important that you would copy the data back, because we treat the scratch disk as a true scratch disk, and after a few days the data will be purged, because we need to keep that scratch disk open for the next user. We can't have it fill up with data. And then software, user software is where all the data is located. We've already talked about that. And lab groups. So a lot of times when people sign up for an NMRbox account, you're going to get a home folder, and whoever the username is going to be the owner of that file, and the group owner of those files are also going to be the user. However, if a group of users basically contact us through an email at support@nmrbox.org, we can take a group of users and group them together into a lab group and change the primary group for all those users, and then they can open up group permissions on their files to allow the group to be able to have read access to their files for sharing. So how does one connect to NMRbox? So most of you, I'm expecting, have probably have already connected to NMRbox, but we do have full SSH access. So that's one way to get in. And the other way is through Real VNC Viewer. And if you use the Real VNC Viewer, there are a lot of different benefits. Some you may not even be aware of. One is you get a full graphical interface. I think everybody would know that. One nice thing is when you connect, that the VNC server, if it's not already running, starts automatically. So some people are used to the olden days where you had to like SSH in, start a VNC server remotely, and then try to connect to it. Our server doesn't do that. You just connect to it and it will start automatically. The display port is also handled automatically. Users don't set the display port. It's fully encrypted. That's another difference from standard VNC. We also have single sign-on. So whatever your NMRbox account is the same sign-on that you have for VNC. A nice benefit, I don't know if people have noticed, but your local printer, if you have a default printer on your local computer when you connect, that printer is mapped to your VNC server. So you can actually print locally even though you're working on our remote servers. The VNC sessions will stay active when closed, so processing jobs will continue to process even after you stop the viewer. Runs on almost any device, and it's free for users, and something that we may even do later this afternoon. It's actually fairly easy to share a VNC session with other users. This would require that you have a semi-recent version of Real VNC installed though. So when you go to connect to NMRbox, you would start the VNC viewer program, and you're basically going to type your username.nmrbox.org. And after you connect, these icons will appear, and then you could just double click on those icons later and it will connect easily for you. There's a sign in button here that trips up some users. This has nothing to do with NMRbox. This is a real VNC feature where you can manage these bookmarks across multiple devices if you have an account with real VNC. But it has nothing to do with NMRbox. It's simply for managing your bookmarks. By default, everybody gets username.nmrbox.org. This is actually, excuse me, that was a mistake. This is actually a mistake. I should have taken this away. We used to have username2.nmrbox.org. We no longer support that. That was actually an oversight. I'm sorry about that. But we now have a list of NMRbox VMs, and I'm going to show you on our website shortly. But here's a list of all the names, and users are able to connect to any of these NMRbox VMs. And your username.nmrbox.org would be mapped to one of these, sort of in a random way. So it's easy to remember your username, so that's a good place to connect to. But if the VM that you're on is acting sluggish and you want to try to connect to a different VM, you actually have access to all of the VMs. Just not username2.nmrbox.org. That one will no longer work. I also want to point out that we have two VMs that have high memory, nitrogen and carbon. Nitrogen has 768 gigs of memory. So if you do need a high memory VM to do some advanced data processing or analysis, you can connect to nitrogen. Carbon does as well, but we had a misconfiguration. So currently it's not configured with high memory, but the next time we reboot it, we're going to fix that issue. But right now there's a lot of users on there, so we don't want to reboot it quite yet. But so nitrogen for now, and then in the coming, in the not too distant future, carbon. When you connect to NMRbox, you're going to a little dialog box like this. So when you start VNC viewer, a dialog box like this is going to come up, and you're going to type the username, the VM host. So this would be like carbon.nmrbox.org or your username.nmrbox.org. And then here it's going to prompt you for your username. By default, this is often filled with the local account on the computer that you're on. And it's important that you use your NMRbox username here and not your local username. And then obviously your NMRbox password. You can click remember password if you want, and that way you can just double click the icon that gets built later and you'll just connect automatically. You'll see an identity check here. Sometimes if the VNC server wasn't recognized, you would hit continue. Sometimes you may see a red one. That will happen is we switch versions of NMRbox because the code, the signature will change, and it's just reminding you that that something has changed. So don't be alarmed. So I'm going to jump over to my VNC session again. So this is my NMRbox session. So we have a tool. If you go to settings, and again, your menu might look a little bit differently, but somewhere you have a settings and you have a display. If you click on that, this dialog box here will show up, and it has various screen resolutions built in that you can just click one and it will change to that screen resolution. You can type the width and the height of your desired screen resolution here to anything you want. And once you have one that's set, if you click the save to favorites, it will then appear in your favorites here, so you can switch. So let's say you go from home to work and you have different screen sizes at home and work, you can have some favorites built. So you could just toggle your screen resolution quite easily between the two. So I can just click change to that resolution, which is 2560, and I can just click the button and I can change to 1920. And then, of course, like you're doing now, I can resize screens as well. I can drag things bigger or smaller. You can save the settings to your startup file. So if you have a default screen resolution, once you get it, if you click Save Settings to your startup file, that then becomes the default. Next time you connect to NMRbox and a new VNC session starts, it will automatically use that screen resolution. So you don't have to keep changing from our default. You can pick your own default. And there's a Save Settings to Bash script. So that would just show you what the command is on the back end. Not sure many people really need to do that, but if you had the desire, you could. So that's how you change the screen resolution in NMRbox, which could be very, which is obviously very, very important to be able to do. The closing a VNC session. So this is actually fairly important. I'm actually going to come back here very quickly. So in order to, so this VNC session is running right now, and it's running on nitrogen.nmrbox.org. And I can close it a couple different ways. I can hit right here, if I put the mouse in the very center, this pull down menu appears in the VNC window, and it has an end session. I can click that. Or I can click the X up here in the window. And either of them will do the exact same thing. And that is that they will disconnect from my VNC session. So we have just closed, I had just closed that VNC session to nitrogen. Now, if I double click the nitrogen icon again, you'll notice that I just reconnected and it's still running. And I know it's still running because the terminal window that I had open is still sitting right where I left it. Sometimes you may actually want to really log out, though. You don't want to just close the connection. You actually want to exit your VNC session so it's no longer running. And I actually recommend doing that once in a while. If you're not doing anything, if you don't have any jobs processing, if you don't have a program open that took you 10 minutes to configure, you might as well go ahead and log out. And the way you do that is you can come up here and hit your username, and you'll get a pull down menu, and one of them is log out. So you hit log out, and then you have to hit the log out button again. Now that logged me out as well. Now this time I'm going to double click my icon. I'm going to reconnect, but you'll notice this time that terminal window is closed, and that's because when I logged out that time, it truly logged me out. So any jobs or anything that I had running would have automatically been closed. But this is a nice clean thing to do once in a while. To every once in a while you might find glitches where things aren't working properly. You want to go ahead and log out, and that's one way to log out. And I'm going to show you another way as well. Another way is through the NMRbox website. So let me. So from the NMRbox website, and you can see the NMRbox window running in the background. When I log in, so if I come to the NMRbox website, I can do sign in, and then I can type my username and password. And when I log in and I authenticate on the NMRbox website, I can go to my account, and it shows me these 4 tabs here. One of them is update profile, where I can change information, what my institutional email is if I moved institution, what my preferred email is. You can change information. And we do ask people, if you move from one institution to the other, that you keep your profile updated. You have password management, where you can change your password. And hosted VMs, and this is where I was actually just discussing. So this hosted VMs is a new page that we have, and on here it shows you at the top, if you have any active VNC sessions, it shows you all the computers that you're connected to. So right now I'm only connected to nitrogen.nmrbox.org, and there is a terminate button. So from this website, so let's say I was locked out and I couldn't that VNC session wasn't no longer behaving properly. I couldn't log in. There was something wrong, and I want to know what to do. Well, the easiest thing to do is to come to this website, log in, and then click the terminate button, click terminate, and that terminated that VNC session. Down below, you can also see all the NMRbox VMs that you're able to connect to. And you can see what the current load average is on those servers. And you can click on any one and it will show you what the load has been over the past week. So you can come along and find a server that isn't very busy. So, or if your VM is very busy. So if you are on Silicon and it's not working really well and it's sluggish, you're like, oh wow, when we go look, and like, okay, it has heavy load. I'm going to switch to another NMRbox VM. So you come and you find another one, say nitrogen, and then you can hit launch, authenticate with your password, and you are connected again. So this is a nice tool for doing some management of your VMs. And again, I had to refresh the screen, but by refreshing the screen, I can then see nitrogen is indeed running again. While I'm here, I'm just going to show you the downloadable VM. So if you want to download a VM, you would come here and under generate a new VM, you would select the VM you want, what your username is, request to download. Once you request a download, you'll get these download buttons here that you can click on that allow you to download the VM. And I think I'm going way over time here, so I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. So I'm going to pass through it here because this is how to close the sessions, which I just did with you. Another very common failure for VNC connections is when we connect to whatever the server is, be it say carbon.nmrbox.org or username.nmrbox.org, sometimes you won't connect and you'll get like a connection denied error. The most common cause of that is the institution that you're on is actually blocking the connection out. By default, VNC uses a port called port number 5900. And it could be that your institution is blocking you from connecting outbound traffic on port 5900. One easy solution to that is just to put a :443 after the server name. And that is typically reserved for web traffic, secure web traffic. So almost all institutions will allow communications on port 443 outbound. So if you ever can't connect, the first thing to try is to add a :443 and see if that fixes the problem. The nice thing is the VNC server itself does not care. So whether you connect to NMRbox.org or put a 5900 or 443, you're still connecting. The VNC server at the back end is just going to map you to the same session. So it does not matter how you connect. They'll all connect to the same server. I kind of went through this already. We have 19 different VMs that you connect to. Most of them have around 40 cores and 180 gigs of RAM and an NVIDIA GPU. We have nitrogen and carbon that are high memory nodes, although carbon needs to be fixed. And I just showed you, you can see your various VMs. We also have older versions of version 2 through version 6 of NMRbox running as well. So if there's a software version or an older piece of software that didn't migrate into the latest version, you can gain access to it by going back to older versions of NMRbox. Transferring files. So if you're going to use NMRbox, you're going to have to move files, obviously, into your NMRbox account and then back out. Again, and there are a variety of ways that this could be done. I'm just going to kind of talk about them. Users just sort of have to figure out what is the best method for them, and it really depends on what platform they're coming from and what their skill levels are. but we support secure copy, so you can use a command such as this, and I'm not going to go through it. I'll put the documents here for you to go over later on your own, but you can secure copy files to or from NMRbox. Here's a nice website for showing you how you can even do it, so you're not even prompted for your password. Some tools, some GUI-based tools, FileZilla is one of them that allows you, it gives you a graphical interface for doing file transfers. I'm very preferential to a program called Bitvice Tunnelier. That's a Windows-based program. It's also a really nice program because you can use it for a graphical drag and drop transfer of files, but you can also do SSH connections through Bitvice Tunnelier as well. Kind of short on time, so I don't want to go too much into it. And there's a huge amount of information out there about using something called Globus. But Globus is, I'll just kind of tell you what Globus is and not really go through a demo on how to use it. So Globus is a tool to transfer file between endpoints. And it behaves a lot like an FTP program, where you can connect the two endpoints and move files between them. But it has some differences. So one is that one of the endpoints, one of the nice features is it can circumvent firewalls. So the two endpoints, the other thing is you don't need to be local to either of them. So it's all done through a web interface. And if you have your various endpoints set up, from any web page, when you authenticate, you can see all of your web points, even all of your endpoints, even if you're not on those computers. So I could have an endpoint running on my home computer, I could be on my work computer, and NMRbox could be an endpoint. And from my work computer, I can connect to my NMRbox endpoint and my home computer endpoint, even though my home computer is not generally accessible over the network, but through Globus it is. It's a very efficient transfer. You can transfer large numbers of files. It allows syncing and preservation of file modifications. Transfers can be interrupted. So if you're transferring to, say, a laptop and you shut your laptop off, then you open your laptop you open your laptop a few hours later, the transfer will just continue. It doesn't just end and then have to restart. It will just continue from where it left off. And for setting up, you can set up personal endpoints, which is just installing a little Globus application on your Mac or your Windows computer. And then NMRbox is already registered as an institutional endpoint. So if you just type NMRbox in Globus when you're doing the transfer, it will just find it. And then you will authenticate with your NMRbox username and password, and then you can do file transfers. Here's a few slides that you can go through on your own that sort of take you through the process of setting things up and doing a transfer. So you can do secure copy, you can use SFTP, GUI-based applications, you can do Globus, and I've just stumbled across another file transfer utility literally a couple days ago, and it's called SSHFS, which is stands for SSH file system, and it uses something called the Fuse file system, and it can create a mount point of your NMRbox home folder on your local computer. And once you do that, you get full drag and drop file access to a local hard drive. And it works with OS X, Linux, Windows 10, and we're just in the midst of putting together some documentation for how to install on OS X and Windows. And I'm just going to show you. So this is my Windows computer here. I'll just minimize some of these windows. So I'll just open up my file browser. So this is just your typical Windows file browser. And after I make my mount point, I literally just have a mount point. This acts as just another, this is my NMRbox home folder. So even though I'm on my Windows computer in my office, I basically have full access to my NMRbox files, and I can grab files and I can drag them over, and they will copy over. So you can get full drag and drop file access. So this is a very nice utility. And Gerard Weatherby actually posted on a new wiki that we have, some instructions for how to do this for OS X. And at some point today, we're going to get you information about how to access that wiki. I did not get time to update my my slides today. So the NMRbox community, the website has our events, our publications, how to connect to us, our various teams. There's a support page on our website with FAQs. I do ask people go to the FAQs very often. We get a lot of support tickets with over 2,000 users, and the majority of our support tickets now are just a matter of pointing somebody to our FAQ page where the answer already lies. Information about how to contact us. And I also talk about our new downloadable VM. So I've already shown this to you on our website. You can go, once you authenticate and you go to my account, you can go to the downloadable VMs and you can download a local copy of the NMRbox VM to your local computer. And with version 7 of NMRbox, we have a new downloadable VM model. In version 6 or previous, when you downloaded the NMRbox VM, you got the entire NMRbox VM. So if we had 175 programs installed and it was 90 gigabytes in size, you basically got that entire thing. Even though the majority of the software packages you didn't want, you probably any user only going to use a small number. And because of the size of it, it really precluded people from installing it on, like, especially laptops, because it was just too large to install. So our new model, when you download version 7 of the NMRbox VM, what you're going to download is just a few gigabytes in size, and it's going to be an NMRbox VM, but without the NMR software installed. And I'm just going to go, and once you would run it, so this is yours would look a little bit different because we would have a NMRbox background, but essentially it would look the same as this one. And then there would be an icon on your desktop. There would be an icon on your desktop that says NMRbox software, and you can double click that, or you can, from a terminal, just type NMRbox software. And this nice little GUI will appear. And in this GUI, you have to authenticate once. So once you do download it and you authenticate with your NMRbox account once, and then you don't need to authenticate anymore. And then you need to know what your password is for your local machine. But you hit this authenticate, and then you're into the app. And once you do that once, then you don't have to do it again. The next time you come to it, this GUI will just open. There's a search box here, but you can go through and you can find various software packages, say Kara, and then it will show you the various packages that can be installed, and you can check the ones that you want to install. It'll give you a list, a running list here. So if you chose, say, another program, say CNS, you can add to it. If you decide you didn't want that one, you can remove it. And then you can hit, once you have built up the list of software packages you want to install, you hit generate script. I'm just going to make sure the file name is fine. Hit save, and then I can run that script. You'll get prompted for the administrative password on the VM that you've installed, and it's going to go ahead and install this package. The nice thing about this is the way that we built this package is you're not just installing, in this case, Kara, but you're installing all the dependencies that Kara needs. And those packages, those could be packages from Ubuntu. They could be other NMR software packages that Kara might be dependent on. I don't think Kara has any, but if it did, it would install them. So all the dependencies, and you can actually see all the various software packages that were installed. There's about a dozen different software packages that were handled automatically. And now the user could go, and if you looked in user software, you can now see that Kara is installed. So this is a very nice utility. And if you run it again, and if I come back and I hit Kara, you'll notice Kara is already checked because the utility knows what's installed. So you can come back into this utility as many times as you want and add additional software packages as needed. So this allows you to just go through and select the software packages that you want, and it makes the downloadable NMR box much smaller and much lighter weight. So I think that is a much improved downloadable NMR experience. This just showing you some slides for what I just did. Managing your account, I kind of showed you some of the management, how you can get into your personal profile and update it. When you go to log in on the NMRbox website, if you forgot your password, there's a forgot password button right here. If you click on it, then an email will be sent to you for a password reset. This is the user dashboard, which I've already showed you. This is very important, is citing NMRbox. So if you use NMRbox in your research, please cite us and acknowledge us. That's very important for us. We're trying to bring a great resource to you, and the only way we can do that is to continue to get funding, and the only way we can get funded is if people cite us and publish, when they publish, if they cite and acknowledge us. And if we get high enough numbers there, then the funding agencies have a harder time of saying that we're not going to continue funding. So that is my talk.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mark.